All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I am going to be reviewing Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, book number 2 in The Song of Ice and Fire. If you don't know about these books now or yet, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but oh Lord, I have mercy. Did these books get super popular? Especially when they made the HBO television series based off of these books. Now, I was in on the George R.R. Martin bandwagon from the get-go. I remember getting an arc of the book from my friend David Farland, who was an author that I was friends with at the time. I lived in Provo, Utah. And he's like, hey, publisher sent me this arc. Check it out, read it. I read this before anybody else had read it. And I told Dave, I was like, this is a fucking amazing fantasy book. This Game of Thrones thing here. And he's like, okay, I'll try it out too. And so then, but anyway, when it came out in hardcover, I bought it the day it came out. I read it again for the second time because I thought it was that great. And I eventually ended up meeting George R.R. Martin. And, he signed the copy to me. I always name drop like a motherfucker on this show, if you haven't noticed. But let's talk about book number 2. That's what we came for. You can see my review of book number 1 elsewhere on my channel. I reviewed it about 2 years ago. Type in Game of Thrones, Brian Lee Durfee. The review will magically show up on your TV screen. So let's review the covers first. I always review the book covers first because I love illustration and graphic design. So I've got the mass market paperback. And these have been released in dozens and dozens of different editions. These are the 2 editions I've got. This is the first printing hardcover. And this is probably who knows what printing of mass market this is. But anyway, let's take a look at the hardcover because it's the one I like the most. It's got the great Stephen Ewell painting on it. The gold cover with the red foil font. It's just a sharp-looking novel that Bantam Spectra put out in the day. It's just got the great illustrated maps on the inside. This is a first edition. Again, I don't have this one signed. I only have that one signed. It's just got the great character list at the back, as you know. Let me just start out by saying, okay, that's the hardcover version, which is super dope. This is, hella lame. I don't even know what the they're doing. I mean, who cares? Who cares? I just buy the paperbacks so I can read the paperbacks without destroying my hardcovers. That's the only reason I really have this. But so we'll just put it over here for now. And we'll just talk about this. Came out in 1999. As far as world building goes, let's just talk about that first. Because when I wrote my books, which are also big fat fantasy books, I mean, even bigger than the Wheel of Time, and so I often get compared to George R.R. Martin in the scope of our world building. I love that I get compared to one of my literary heroes. I really do. I happen to think that if you were to compare my world building and George R.R. Martin's world building, George R.R. Martin is offering up a masterclass in world building. Probably the best ever in fantasy. And I don't say that lightly because I love Tad Williams and I think he does a smashingly good job. Robert Jordan does an amazing job. Pat Rothfuss did a great job. Brandon Sanderson's Kingkiller Chronicle. They, not King Killer, but the Stormlight Archives are massive world building constructs. They all pale in comparison to what George R. R. Martin has done here. If you want to learn how to write epic fantasy with an extreme medieval flair, where you get everything right to what every knight on the field of battle wears on his armor, every horse and what they do, every castle and what every room of every castle means. They all have meaning, they all have purpose. Every single thing on a farm, a medieval farm, every single thing that the royalty does and says, and how they approach each other and talk to each other, and even just the way that they address each other. George R. R. Martin has done such an impeccable job of researching all of this that he just plops you down into this world that is constructed by a master world builder, and you just read through this stuff effortlessly, like you're not even noticing how spectacular it is. You know, just next time you pick up one of these Game of Thrones books, just pay attention to the way he describes his characters and the things that they wear. I mean, it's just simple things, just the way he mentions simple clothing items and the precision in which he mentions the exact thing that they're wearing and why they're wearing it and how they're wearing it, that you know that they've just stepped out of medieval Great Britain and onto the page. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but I studied the way that he crafted his world when I wrote my books, because I wanted to sort of mimic his style and flavor, so I didn't get things wrong, so people weren't coming to me in book reviews and complaining about, hey, that's not how archery works, that's not how, horses behaved in battle. Hey, that's not how. No, I reading George R. R. Martin, I knew that I had to compete on his level when it came to world building, and so I studied everything he was doing. And if there was something that I didn't know about, I made sure I researched it. Like if I wanted to know about a whaling ship and how people were killing whales in medieval times, I researched that. I made a point of making sure that it was detailed, because I knew that guys like George R. R. Martin were doing that. And if I wanted to compete at their level, I had to do it too. Same with Bernard Cornwell, Robert Jordan, Tad Williams. They all do it. And I had to make sure I do it. That is the beginning of my review, just the world building. If you love that kind of thing, this is your guy. Let's talk about character, plot, and story, because this is like crack cocaine, plot-wise and story-wise and pacing-wise. If you've picked up Game of Thrones, and you just know that this is relentless in its driving of the plot forward, where every chapter builds upon, and you're hanging on every chapter with, you're breathless in some of them, especially if they're told from the characters that you like. That's another thing that I did with my books is, if you've read these before, you know that George R. R. Martin tells Jon Snow chapters, or Arya Stark chapters, or Cersei Lannister chapters, and they're told from the perspective of those individual characters. I wanted to also mimic that gimmick in my books, where each chapter rotated between a different character's perspective. And if you're on a character's perspective that you love, you just hold your breath every moment that you're reading it, because you love these characters. Like you go to an Arya Stark chapter, and one of my favorite characters that George R. R. Martin wrote. Same with Sansa Stark. Some people hated the Sansa Stark chapters. I loved them. Two of my favorite literary characters of all time, Arya and Sansa Stark. And you just follow their adventures, their heartbreaks, their triumphs, their gut-wrenching experiences. And nobody does it better, I think, maybe aside from Ken Follett, with just giving you antagonists that you hate, but you love reading them. You love reading about them. You hate them as antagonists. You hate them as people. You deplore them as people, but you love reading about them. Ken Follett is the only other writer I can think of that really does another master class on creating great protagonists and bouncing them off of their antagonists in brilliant ways. I just absolutely love it. And the thing is about these books is, who are the antagonists? Who are the protagonists? Sometimes you don't know. It's a very, very gray world. It's a hard world. It's a stark world to live in. It's a very medieval world. And George R.R. Martin has built it up as a very medieval world throughout book 1 and book 2. And then we get, I haven't even mentioned really the storyline, but we don't even need to. We don't even need to. You know, we've got Tyrion, the dwarf. We've got Jaime Lannister, the guy that we hate, but then we start to love. And we got Brienne of Tarth. And we've got Bran and Robb Stark and Rickon Stark and Jon Snow and Cersei, not Cersei, their mother Catelyn, and the 2 young girls I spoke of earlier, Arya and Sansa. And they've all just, in this book, they are all living their own adventures in different parts of this world. Some of them up north of the Wall, dealing with the White Walkers. Others down in Lannisport and everywhere, just everywhere in between. And then we get introduced to a bunch of great new characters. Those are just the characters that are in this book, you know. Joffrey Baratheon. Oh my gosh. One of the guys, whenever Joffrey's on scene, you just are like, could there be a bigger douchebag in literature? I don't even know. But Joffrey Baratheon just pulls it off. And George R.R. Martin writes him so brilliantly that even when you watch the TV show, you're just like, the little actor that plays that guy, man, he nailed it. He nailed it probably more than any other character cast. Joffrey Baratheon. That poor kid typecast himself as Joffrey Baratheon for the rest of his life. He might not ever get another acting job because of that. Anyway. Who else? Oh, yeah, the Mountain. The Hound and the Mountain. Jaqen H'ghar. Jaqen H'ghar makes his... Oh, yes, a man must know. A girl will give a man a name. Oh, just so many great characters. And then we've got the Onion Knight and Stannis Baratheon and Renly Baratheon and Melisandre the Red Witch. Oh, my Lord. Every one of these characters is so memorable in my head. Not only before the show, because I read each one of these books 10 times before the show even started. And the show knocked it out of the park. We have to agree, the first 7 seasons of the show were just dynamite. Everybody loved them. Maybe the 8th season, we won't get into that. But you have to admit that was some of the most brilliant storytelling TV-wise ever put to film, and it's because it was based off of George R.R. Martin's brilliant storytelling in the books. Clash of Kings. I remember the first time I read this. I read the first half of it in one sitting in front of a fireplace. And I don't know if there's a better place to read a book but in front of a fireplace, and it was in a ski lodge, no less. And it was just one of the most magical reading experiences I've ever had. And I think we can all relate to this. You know, you've got your, some of you have probably read a book that you loved on a porch in a rainstorm, or, you know, it curled up in your bed on a cold winter's night, or maybe on the beach in the Mediterranean. I don't know where the fuck you guys vacation to, but you know what I'm talking about. I had one of my most memorable moments of all time reading was sitting in a ski lodge in front of a roaring fireplace and just starting this book and getting about halfway through it 7 hours later, realizing I hadn't even moved. That's how good this thing is. That's how good they all are. George R.R. Martin, if you've watched any of my videos, you know he's one of my literary heroes. I love getting compared to him with my own books. I love when professional reviewers compare me to him. I love when just people on Goodreads or YouTube reviews or Amazon compare me to him, because I really, really did try to copy a lot of what he was doing. I mean, I'm not even going to try to hide that fact. So anyway, Clash of Kings. Just an abs. Oh, another thing. At the end of this is a battle scene that is beyond compare. And I read that battle scene, and I knew that when I wrote my book too, I had to have a battle scene that compared in scope and amazement to the battle scene at the end of Clash of Kings. And so I hope I did it. Some people think that, some say reviews are in. My battle scene at the end of Blackest Heart, my number book 2, is pretty fucking dope in its own right. And I really did try. I was like, I gotta, George R. R. Martin is my competition. I've looked up to him for so long. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to do it the way he did it, which is to end that book number 2 with a battle scene that just took your breath away. So I owe a lot to George R. R. Martin in a lot of different ways. These books are 10s out of 10s. I don't know. You probably already knew that I was going to give them 10s out of 10s. They're just that fucking awesome. And Clash of Kings, book number 2, is no different. And just some of my most treasured possessions, I will say, of all time.